Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new episode of Screenplay Rewind. I'm Geoff.
I'm Ron.
And we are now beyond Friends and Family Month and back to Ron and Jeff's picks and
Our regularly scheduled programming.
Regularly scheduled programming. So, which movie, since this was your selection, have you selected for us this week, Ron?
The goddamn Fifth Element, Jeff.
The Fifth Element, brought to you in 1997, which this movie is 24 years old now. That's depressing. Seriously, if you want to just feel terrible about yourself, just look up whatever year a classic movie that you like came out. Like the fucking gold nugget that Lord of the Rings, Fast and the Furious, and the Harry Potter movies are all 20 years old this year, and that's not okay.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Iron Man came out in 2008.
I was in fucking high school when Iron Man came out. I'm so fucking old. I'm old enough to have gotten fucking drafted next to Captain America, dude. It's fucking terrible.
In the 40s?
Yeah.
Captain America, not Chris Evans?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's bad. I am the boomer of all the video games I play. I am routinely referred to that, and I have just accepted it as a badge of old ass honor now, I guess. You know, whatever.
So
you do what you do.
I thought about opening this episode by posing a question to you, Jeff, because I'd be interested to hear your answer. I don't have one.
Do it.
I don't have one. I'm just interested to hear your answer.
Whatever it is, I didn't do it. Okay, go ahead.
The Fifth Element boggles my mind a little bit with how popular it is.
I was going to bring that up too. Go ahead.
So, if you think about A, Luc Besson, B, any movie that is kind of in this vein, whether it's sci-fi or not, with like the weird music and the weird characters and the weird story, and there's even kind of a lot of weird plot stuff going on in this movie that you just don't give a crap about, that they don't talk about or don't wrap up or don't really like handle. But this movie is a goddamn classic, and I've never met anyone who didn't at least enjoy watching it once.
Man.
And the internet loves this movie. And I don't get me wrong, I do too. It was my number one favorite movie for a long time. But it kind of boggles my brain. It seems like this is a movie that I would love and everyone else would hate.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of this movie.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, so when you talked about watching this and picking it for the show, I was super excited to revisit it, right?
Oh no.
Because I remembered watching it as a kid, but it was in the late 90s. I was like 6 or 7. So I remember vaguely watching it, probably too young. You know, it's all fun and games until the 7-year-old kid sees a, blue xenomorph opera singer, get shot by a machine gun.
This isn't your first on-screen boobs, is it? Or boob? I think it's just boob.
Maybe.
Side boob.
Maybe. I don't know.
Full side boob.
Honestly,
side but boob.
So I remember watching the movie, but I was not old enough, and I'm still not old enough to fully understand what I just watched to this very day. But I didn't really have an opinion because I was just too young.
Yeah.
And having watched it as an adult with having no nostalgia for it, I'm going to need you to steer this episode because I don't know what to make of this movie. I definitely don't hate it and I definitely don't like it, but I'm just confused and was just mesmerized by what I was watching, because some of it, I appreciate how unabashedly fucking bonkers this movie is and does not give a fuck about how crazy it is. It's admirable to that extent, but
the reason I was hammering,
it's so weird.
The reason I was hammering on the point of boobs so much in this movie is because the future seems to be all about boobs. That was one thing I didn't remember until going back into from McDonald's to the stewardesses to full-on supreme being in a glass tube. The only boobs we didn't see is the squid lady.
What do they call her fucking Band-Aid clothes? They call them thermal
bandages.
What the fuck is that? What is thermal about wearing Band-Aids?
To keep her warm? I guess
she's 90% naked. It's basically just underwear and fucking like nipple pasties.
Maybe
and I
maybe they're flame retardant.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. See, now everything makes sense.
See, there you go. We can explain everything away. Welcome to Screenplay Rewind.
So, to your point, one of my first notes that I wanted to talk about with this movie. Oh, full spoilers. I'm sorry, I already spoiled the xenomorph blue opera lady, but full spoilers for everything we will ever talk about on this godforsaken podcast. So you know. But
this is off to a great start.
How did someone read this script and be like, yeah, here's $90 million?
I was going to say, dude, even with the budget it's gotten, honestly, now I was watching like a Blu-ray, which I'm sure is remastered, but it looked as good as I remembered it looking back then. Some effects are kind of now, but for the most part, for 1997, I thought a lot of the effects and costume design and everything still kind of worked.
Specifically, like 90% of the CGI in this movie is incredible for the time.
No PS2 cutscenes like fucking Lockout.
Yeah. Fucking Lockout made like 20 years later look like a PS2 cutscene with that stupid ass unnecessary motorcycle bullshit. But the CGI in Fifth Element in 1997 actually looks really good, especially like the
cab chase.
Like, the weird fucking evil planet that wasn't Kurt Russell.
Anti-ego.
Yeah, the
Nega ego.
Nega ego.
Nega ego
Fight. Wins. So that looked kind of cheesy at parts, but like the fucking spaceships look like
spaceships look cool.
Good.
Yeah.
They look great. Now, of course, the movie gets a 0 out of 10 because we start the movie off with a slowly panning spaceship that doesn't have a "We Break for Nobody" bumper sticker on the back. So I immediately hated this movie, and it was not able to regain its footing.
And
so
no Mega Maid. Like, dude, nothing went from suck to blow, Geoff. What am I supposed to think of this movie?
It's true. Aspect I really like about it, too, is I appreciate when movies make sci-fi futures look kind of gross, because I feel like that's probably where we're going.
What I appreciate about this, right, is you've got a lot of futuristic sci-fi where it's like nearly utopia, and then you have the exact opposite with like Blade Runner. And here it looks kind of like it does today, maybe a little grimier, maybe a little more weird. But all in all, New York, I believe, is where they're at. Still kind of looks like New York. I still kind of see New York in it. You know?
Yeah. It's weird.
I love the IMDb description, by the way.
What's the IMDb description?
In the colorful future, a cab driver unwittingly becomes central figure. I love the colorful future. Of all the ways to not describe the future that is this movie, colorful future is probably at the top.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, with this movie, I was just taken aback by how fucking bizarre this movie is. And like 90 million adjusted for inflation.
Oh no. Is this Avengers?
That's a lot of fucking money, dude. I haven't looked at the exact number, but for 1997, for 24-year-old inflation, that's a lot of fucking money, dude. And I just don't understand how this movie exists. I really don't. Up to this point, Luc Besson had only made a couple of movies. The only real standout as far as movies of his that got incredibly popular was The Professional, which is a great movie, but it's not the type of movie where you watch and you're like, yeah, let's give that guy a fucking $100 million almost to make this fucking weird ass I don't even know what genre to call this, because it is sci-fi, but it's like no other science fiction I've ever seen. It's just so fucking out there.
And $90 million in 1997 is $147.5 million today.
Yeah, that's AAA. That's like fucking Marvel level, you know? And the fact that this movie got the equivalent of 1997 to a fucking major Marvel release budget Batshit. This real quickly. So directed by Luc Besson, which I think we'd already mentioned. It was written by Luc Besson and Robert Mark Kamen, based on a story that Luc Besson had in his head basically since he was 16 years old.
Which usually translates to a really, really strong film, right? Like so you got an idea you've been mulling over for years or decades. Usually that translates over pretty good. Like Knives Out, I believe, is one of those. I think Baby Driver is one of those.
I think it's kind of hit or miss. I know you like Sucker Punch. I hate Sucker
Punch.
And that was a movie that had been brewing in Mr. Snyder Cut for, since he was like 12.
Okay, I do take points off of it for that. But
yeah, the cast is really strong. You have Bruce Willis, Gary Oldman, Ian Holm, Chris Tucker, Mia Jovovich. A lot of character actors that you've seen in a million things. I had no fucking clue. Did you remember Luke Perry being in this movie? Because I had no clue Luke Perry was in this movie. He's in it for like 3 minutes too.
Yeah, I always thought it was a very odd pick.
Very random casting.
Yeah.
Also random casting. As much as I love him, why is Tiny Lister the president?
I don't know, but I love it.
He acts like he's bored for 3/4 of the movie, and I just don't understand. Dude, Luc Besson has a fucking boner for unnecessarily having the president in his movies. The same fucking thing happened with Lockout. And I'm just like, bro, not every movie has to have the it's like he watched Escape from New York. He was like, all right, first of all, I love this movie. Eventually, I'm going to remake this movie. And then get sued because of this movie.
Does it turn out that the Supreme Being is actually the president's daughter? I forget.
Probably. There was... This movie also has no act structure as far as I can tell.
Really okay. Doesn't.
Here is a legitimate complaint.
Okay.
Something I legitimately do not like about this movie
I'll be the judge of how legitimate it is.
As a writer nerd, the first 35 minutes of this film are literally nothing but exposition. That's a problem. Because they leave no mystery to...
I believe it is called world building.
I believe it is called poor first act world building, because if they just kind of sprung Mia Jovovich into the movie and didn't fully explain her, the first half of the movie would work a lot better. It would make it more interesting.
Start the movie with her landing in his cab.
Because, like, think about it to a comparison of world building that would be happening 2 years later in The Matrix. The Matrix is how to have incredibly interesting world building, because they give you out details in like little glimpses here and there to keep you coming back and keep you invested and make you want to know more. You know everything as because of their fucking World War I Egyptian hieroglyphic exposition dialogue. You know the entire fucking movie basically within the first 10 minutes, which is kind of a problem. It's kind of
What?
I understand he had this movie, brewing in his head since he was a teenager, and that is kind of cut and dry exposition world building is to have I mean, it's think back to our Dragon Ball Evolution episode. It was like that, but Dragon Ball Evolution, that was the entire fucking movie, was this poorly planned and executed exposition. The movie.
Shenlong. What are the odds that was a studio decision because the movie was like too crazy or too out there, or the studio felt like it was hard to understand?
I don't feel like this movie had any studio interference at all. I feel like if it did, it wouldn't be nearly as bizarre and fucking crazy as it is. Because this movie goes to some weird fucking places. You have a fucking montage sequence of Ian Holm sneaking his way onto the ship, with them fucking shooting parasites off of the interior of the ship, and fucking Chris Tucker going down on one of the stewardesses of the plane.
Yep.
All in a 5-minute span.
Yep. Welcome to the Fifth Element.
With the you might have nostalgia for the soundtrack. I hate the soundtrack of this movie.
Really?
I wanted to... It was nails on a chalkboard.
Oh my god, it's so good.
The soundtrack of this movie almost ruined the movie for me. I couldn't stand it. It's so brutally 90s, and I'm not nostalgic. I know you're a little bit older than me, so I think that's probably the difference. Are you like 6 years older than me, I believe?
This sounded nothing like Papa Roach to me. That's what I think of when I think of the 90s. That and Everclear and all that. I don't know.
No, when they fucking grind the movie to a halt to have saxophone playing while they have a romantic scene between Mia Jovovich and Bruce Willis, that's some of the brutally 90s shit that I'm talking about. And like just
I don't remember
the
that.
kind of like the spunky hip hop they have playing out of place a lot of the movie is really weird to me. And it's just I don't think the music is always bad, but the moments they apply it to, it didn't gel for me.
What about what about the music during the cab chase at the beginning after she crashes into his cab?
Is that where it becomes almost like reggae?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hated it.
That is the exact track I think of when I think of this movie.
It's so off-putting to me as someone who doesn't really have nostalgia for the 90s. It's incredibly off-putting to me because I hate a lot of 90s music and a lot of 90s
the one thing that
soundtracks. It
definitely strikes me as very 90s about this movie is, oh boy, in the late 80s and kind of all through the 90s, we were very concerned about like gangs taking over the United States and indoctrinating our youth. And we were kind of coming out of that a little bit as we got to the 2000s, but you still see that in this movie, right? With the hairstyles that people were wearing, the kind of like punk aesthetic to a lot of the clothing, even people just walking down the street. You see a lot of that kind of 90s influence throughout. I do love the guy, though, standing outside of his door with the hat with the picture of his hallway on it.
That's pretty, That's great.
Been out here long?
I like too how he takes he just has a massive bin of like 30 guns that he's taken ostensibly off of muggers and shit that have just knocked on his door to steal shit from him, and he's just so casually used to it, and also just from his like military background or whatever, he just couldn't give less of a shit. So here's a question.
Yes.
I know you love this movie.
Oh yes.
But I'm also very confused as to why Bruce Willis agreed to be in this movie, because this is not a Bruce Willis movie at all. Bruce Willis is usually... Now, I know he's basically just playing John McClane in space, which I'm perfectly fine with.
Which I'm pretty sure maybe how it was pitched to him, because he was kind of the hottest thing at the moment.
But if you just like look back on Bruce Willis's career, now obviously like the later Die Hards got over the top and ridiculous.
I still love Live Free or Die Hard, by the way. I just want to put that out there.
Is that which one is that? Is that the fourth one?
The fourth
with
one.
Timothy Olyphant?
Yep.
That one's okay. Everyone hates that one. I think that's okay. I haven't seen any of the ones after that, but I kind of believe people when they say they're terrible.
I haven't seen a single one after that either.
They looked terrible from the trailers.
Oh yeah, they looked really bad.
And I think the last one I ever wanted to see was that fourth one. I agree. So here's the thing though. If you look back on Bruce Willis's career, Pulp Fiction's a little bit out there, but it's a very grounded out there. It's not, science fiction. And like for the one type of sci-fi role for him to jump on to being this fucking bonkers ass Fifth Element type of movie. So it's just crazy to me that he even accepted the role. For
a little perspective, this is what, 97? This is 2 years after Die Hard with a Vengeance came out. And if this came out in 97, also 97 was also The Jackal, which I fucking love.
I need to watch that again. I have not seen that in such a long time that I also do not remember it really.
12 Monkeys was 95 also. That was same as Die Hard with a Vengeance. So he's coming off of that. And if this came out in 97, then that means he was in the middle of filming Mercury Rising, Armageddon, and Sixth Sense was 99. So this is smack in the middle of Bruce Willis at the height of his popularity. Yeah.
I forgot about 12 Monkeys. That's probably the closest. What's funny is
that's pretty hard sci-fi for him, for sure.
12 Monkeys is a pretty fucking crazy movie. It's fucking nothing compared to Fifth Element. it's
more traditional sci-fi, yeah.
It's as grounded as freaking Die Hard compared to Fifth Element, dude. Like, it's fucking crazy.
But yeah,
But,
this is smack in the middle. So someone probably said Die Hard, and his agent probably said Die Hard in space, and he said sign me up.
Also, I guarantee you, this movie, if it costs $90 million, a large chunk of that $90 million probably went directly to Bruce Willis's bank account.
I guarantee
he probably made like a pretty hefty upfront charge, and probably also finagled shit on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie was really successful too. It made over like 260 million at the box office, which is just to see how much money this movie made. Like, to your point at the beginning of the episode, is this movie just like defies reality while you're watching it, and then just also the behind the scenes shit as far as it actually getting made in the first place, and just how popular and successful it was, like you'd mentioned. So do you I think you and I are both, I don't know how to really feel about Bruce Willis just as a dude, because by all accounts he's a complete shithead.
Oh,
but
God, he's terrible.
I love Pulp Fiction and Die Hard 1 and 3, and he just has so many great roles of his that I love.
Yeah.
Do you like his performance in this?
I do.
Is this one of you do? Okay.
I feel like Corbin Dallas was probably written for Bruce Willis. I feel like that's probably why they sought him out.
The only thing that made me a little bit disappointed is if this movie had happened like 10 years earlier. I think Kurt Russell, just for whatever fucking reason, just has this thing about him where when you juxtapose him to the weird settings and characters of something like The Fifth Element, like if you think back to like Escape from New York, and he like his character reactions to The Thing and John Carpenter's The Thing, he had this like in his prime, he had this thing about him where he always was just Big Trouble in Little China.
Right. I love
when he would play off of these just fucking bonkers ass movies around him, and he always just had this like, what the fuck is happening kind of mystique to his performances that I always loved.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I like Bruce Willis in this. I think he's a little bit too much just John McClane in space. Like, he's just literally John McClane with bleached hair.
Yeah.
And it works.
That's
because
the way he is
movie
in
makes
most
it
of
work.
his roles, though. And he's one of those actors that if you use him well, I think it works, right? If you need a John McClane, you go to John McClane.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way I feel. The issue that I take with like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and all of them is they are just Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, but people keep signing them up for things that they don't work in. Of all the people in the world to play the Martian, Matt Damon was born for that role, right? Like,
he's so good.
He's so good. That is an instance where he was used well. And I think
I agree.
Bruce Willis, like I said, we're in the height of 90s action movies with this movie. Bruce Willis is synonymous with 90s action movies. So I think he was probably the obvious choice back then. Kurt Russell would have been great, I agree, but Bruce Willis is putting asses in seats right here, right now.
I definitely, and a big reason behind the movie's success was probably just that it was the newest Bruce Willis movie.
Exactly.
And of course, everyone's.
And I'm sure that's how it was marketed. I've never watched the trailers. I'm sure that's how it was marketed.
Bruce Willis is probably plastered. His name and his face is got to be all over that. Because like, it's not so much anymore nowadays. Writers, directors, and intellectual properties like the MCU put asses in seats.
Yes.
In the 90s, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and Bruce Willis put asses in
70s,
seats.
80s, and 90s, basically. That's basically the way it worked until things started kind of slowly turning around in the 2000s.
It was mostly the 80s and 90s, because the 70s was actually a very the decade that we've been kind of going through over the past like 10 to 15 years or so, where it's very director, writer, and IP heavy, is like the way the 70s was. Because when you think back to the 70s was very director driven. You like with Kubrick and people like that. And Spielberg starting to take off around that time.
I'm sure that's a cycle that Hollywood goes through every few decades, because also in the 70s is also when you're having like Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns at the same time, right? And you go see the new Clint Eastwood movie because that's what you do, while you've also got Star Wars and Alien and all these other properties coming out. So to me, that's kind of also kind of like the transition we're talking about after the 90s when we went into IP heavy stuff. The 70s is probably transitional. But yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Bruce Willis. If they had a new movie out, it didn't matter what it was. You were going for that actor.
Yeah, it was automatic number one at the box office for the opening weekend.
Yes.
Bar none.
And no, it usually opened by itself because no one was dumb enough to compete with it.
Probably the last actor, and he's no longer that way just because he's made some, questionable career choices in movies over the years. But probably the last person to be in that category, and not specifically action, but was a big enough draw for about 10 years or so, from like the mid 90s to the early, mid early 2000s, probably Will Smith.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, Will Smith, I believe, I think he even had a record at one point where it was along the lines of most films to open up number one at that weekend of the box office. And I think he had a streak like that, I want to say, running for several years, because he was along that same caliber of actor where it was just all you needed to know was Will Smith's in the movie and it was number one for the weekend. But
Will Smith is another interesting career that you could sit back and do an entire podcast on, because there is a handful of movies that is, it's the new Will Smith movie. You go see the new Will Smith movie. Then there's a handful of movies that are just fucking phenomenal movies that he's in. I'm still one of the few that lumps Independence Day in that. But, I'm talking about, like, he's got a pretty good mixed bag of Will Smith versus great movies Will Smith is in and is also great in. He's got a really long, interesting career before the world just kind of turned against him.
It seemed his kids did not help the situation.
No,
Let's
not
just
at all.
Put that out there.
It really didn't help when he started putting his kids in his movies with him, too.
Especially doesn't help when your son is, how do I put this kindly? A complete cunt. That doesn't help.
And his daughter's just in the corner whipping her hair back and forth.
Let's just not talk about that. Talk about fucking soundtracks. Me want to kill myself. Is that that's that Willow Smith song? Good God.
So
good God.
A performance that I want to talk about before we get to the really heavy hitters here. Also, keep in mind, this movie is in theaters while Chris Tucker is filming fucking Rush Hour.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about whether you love Ruby Rhod or hate him. Chris Tucker's performance. Holy shit, dude.
I could only assume he was method acting by snorting lines of cocaine before action every single scene.
I don't know. Like, the way he's moving, the way he's talking, the way he's acting, like, just the way he's kind of making it work. Like, he's acting his ass off, dude.
Yeah, he's he's really good in the movie, and at the same time, I kind of hate his character just because of how.
But you're supposed to, right? At the same time.
Yeah. It's to no fault of him, and I understand, because he's trying to make a statement on the way that the media portrays news, and how violence and terribleness sells, and there's a lot of subtext in this movie that you can totally understand how 16-year-old Luc Besson had these themes in his head, because they're very teenage angsty themes of rebellion and anti-government, and the president's a dipshit and can't fucking do anything, and all things that we've all thought when we were 16 or living in the Trump administration.
And you've got the classic, at the macro level, the human race kind of seems terrible, but there's things worth saving. You've got that classic Peach going on, and love is the answer to everything. Power of friendship.
Yeah.
That all those themes come through in this movie as well. But Chris Tucker, I remembered kind of loving and hating Ruby Rhod. And watching this again, I was just kind of baffled. Like, I don't know if modern Chris Tucker could do this role again. Like, I don't know anyone else in this era that could have done this role, at least to make it as memorable as he was.
Whatever happened? Did you like the Rush Hour movies? I actually liked the first couple of Rush Hour movies. I don't remember if I ever watched the third one, but did you like Rush Hour?
I really liked the first one. I remember apologizing for 2 because it was more Rush Hour. I don't know that I ever saw anything beyond that.
I don't think I did either, but I really liked the first 2 back in the day. I don't know if because comedy is a really hard thing to revisit because comedy is so timely.
Yeah.
And something you could love as far as a comedy that you saw, when you were a teenager or, at certain parts of your life, and just because of how much comedy evolves. I don't know if I would still like Rush Hour, but when I watched them, I really liked Rush Hour 1 and 2. But whatever happened to Chris Tucker? I feel like he hasn't been in anything in probably 15 to 20 years. And I don't really know why, because he does have good comedic timing. He can be funny.
So I'm looking here. Rush Hour 2 is 2001. And then he did a couple of shorts in 2001 and 2005. Rush Hour 3 is 2007. Silver Linings Playbook, which I never saw.
Oh, he's in that? I actually really liked that movie, but I didn't remember him being in it.
That was 2012. 2016, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. I don't know what that is.
No clue what that is.
And then Rush Hour 4 is announced, and he's rumored to be in it, but
it'll happen eventually. Fucking Bad Boys came back. Rush Hour will come back.
Yeah. So
Hollywood wants any. Speaking of IPs,
right.
Once the superhero fad dies down, I don't know what the fuck Hollywood's gonna do, man. Maybe actually get off their ass and make video game adaptations good for once, like they did with comic book movies.
Maybe.
I don't know. We're due for good we're due for good video game adaptations finally, because there have not been many at all.
Yeah.
My probably favorite performance out of the film is Ian Holm. I don't know how you feel about it. I actually really like how Ian Holm actually kind of like walks the tightrope of being crazy while also being grounded. So
yeah, he's one of the heavy hitters that I was going to say for later, but let's go ahead and talk about him in this movie, dude, because Ian Holm, if you want to pick a single movie that can showcase all of his talents at once, I think, because he goes from comedy to drama to
the cherry scene. Dude.
That entire scene, we get a monologue from Gary Oldman, which rolls into a monologue from Ian Holm, and all of it is incredible.
The thing that when he's talking about how he has all the power in the world, but
it all amounts to nothing.
It amounts to nothing, and nothing can help you now outside of me deciding whether I want to spare your life or not. When you make fucking Gary Oldman feel like the person being talked down to in a scene in a fucking movie.
If I'm a crew member, I don't think I can work on that scene. I don't feel like I should be in the same room with Ian Holm and Gary Oldman at the same time.
It's just too much awesomeness for one room.
That's just too much legend.
It should have created a paradox.
This is how black holes are formed. This is how fucking nega egos are formed, is putting this much acting talent in one room. And
I want to see fucking Star-Lord in fucking Living Planet Pac-Man form fighting Mr. Shadow Evil Planet Nega Ego in this movie. Make that happen.
Make it a 3-way fight. Just throw Ego in there.
Yeah, do it.
I wish we had fans, because that would be someone talented enough to at least Photoshop something for us. Yes,
absolutely. One thing I was going to say is I just realized if you have to put 3 faces, and I'm sure we could come up with a 4th one, but just the 3 off the top of my head of the Screenplay Rewind Mount Rushmore. Okay, number 1, John Hurt. Every week devolves into us just gushing about how much we love that man.
I knew it was going to be one of 2 names, and that was one of them.
Okay.
I didn't know who the other one's going to be.
Next one is Stanley Tucci.
Okay.
Next one has got to be Stanley Tucci. The one after that is Ian Holm, because we gush about Ian Holm and talk about how underrated he is. I could probably come up with a 4th one, but those were the 3 that popped to my mind of like the Screenplay Rewind underrated Mount Rushmore that we always find a way to talk about, even when it's not pertinent to like the discussions we're having.
There's one.
I don't know.
Okay. If you want, I was gonna say I've got two more names, but if you want to talk about ones that we bring up all the time for no reason, there's one you're missing.
Okay, go ahead. Who is it?
Carl Urban.
Yes, that's the one.
We always find a reason to shoehorn him into every conversation, like I just did.
I want Carl Urban as his he can be Batman. He can be Indiana Jones. He can do anything.
Just make him all
Just
the
give
things.
him. He's fucking Judge Dredd. Why, how have we not covered Dredd in this podcast?
I don't know.
How have we not covered Dredd on this podcast? I'm disappointed.
But yeah, Ian Holm, what do you think about Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg?
I am torn on. Now, it fucking breaks my heart to say that because I love me some Gary Oldman. I think this might be just when you appear out of left field for Fifth Element, you're fucking going for it, and that's admirable. I respect that.
This is one of my favorite Gary Oldman performances.
I just don't know how now there's scenes that are great, like the machine gun scene where he is selling to the alien dudes.
A true killer would have immediately asked about the little red button on the bottom of the gun.
That scene's, and when he's standing outside as it detonates, that scene's amazing. He just has other scenes where, and I kind of question, like, I think Gary Oldman honestly elevates the role because the movie doesn't really end up having much for him to do other than just act crazy towards the end.
I am disappointed.
I don't know. He has great moments. I just think his character is a little fucking underwritten in elements and just bizarrely inserted into segments where I don't know. I don't dislike it. It's just it's not one of my favorites of his.
But Geoff, what is he supposed to do with an empty case? What's supposed to do with an empty case?
It's that fucking voice that have you now I say this is one of his like crazy out there. Have you ever seen True Romance?
No.
In True Romance, Gary Oldman plays a man with a grill and dreadlocks, and he's a pimp drug dealer.
I have seen those images.
And his voice in that movie, I don't understand how that voice came out of that man. It's fucking crazy. His voice in True Romance is even weirder than his fucking...
He likes to do voices. For Fifth Element, I saw him tell Adam Savage on YouTube that he was going for Bugs Bunny mixed with George Bush. George H.
Interesting.
Bush. And that was what he was... That's what he was going for Zorg's voice.
Okay. Yeah, Think about you about Gary Oldman. It might not always work, but he fucking swings for the fences, no matter what the movie is, no matter what his role is, no matter how big his role is. And the motherfucker can play. Just the fact that he can play something so crazy.
There are certain...
as far as his movies, as far as his roles in the movies of like Fifth Element or True Romance, compared to just like how fucking dry of a performance he can have in something like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Just the range that man has.
All the way to Commissioner Gordon, where he's a supporting character.
Yeah, and just to be able to do all of that.
Did I say Commissioner Gordon or Commissioner Oldman? Because I'm sitting here looking at his name, and I feel like I said Commissioner Oldman.
I think you said Gordon, but I'm so tired right now. I probably would have corrected it in my brain.
I'll fix it in post.
You'll fix it, but we won't. We never do.
No, it's too much work.
But
I'm lazy.
I have never been more happy in my life than when Gary Oldman finally got his Oscar for The Darkest Hour, which I still need to fucking watch. I've been wanting to watch the movie for like 3 years now. I just always forget about it. Where he played Churchill, right? I think that's the performance that finally got him the Oscar. I need to see it.
Right. Yeah, I saw the other one. There was a couple of those that came out at once. And I saw the other one. God, fuck, who was in it?
What was the movie about?
It was Churchill. There was 2 Churchill movies that came out at the same time, kind of like Armageddon and Deep Impact.
And the one I always think of is Volcano and Dante's Peak.
Yes.
2 fucking volcano movies came out like one weekend after the other. What are the fucking odds of that?
Yeah.
Fucking Churchill movies. Was it just called Churchill? I think that might have just had a Churchill movie. I don't even know.
You know what? I'm looking at the poster. It might have been Darkest Hour I saw, now that I think about it.
The Gary Oldman one?
Yeah, now that I'm looking at the poster.
Yeah, I've always wanted to watch that. Just never fucking get around to it because I'm an idiot, but what can you do?
But yeah, anyways, there are certain actors that I love to watch chew up the scenery, and Gary Oldman is one of them, because if you let him loose, he's walking a tightrope usually of he's not jumping the shark, but he is on skis, you know? He gets close but doesn't actually do it.
He's like Nick Cage at 85%.
Yeah. And another one that I think about when I think about Gary Oldman kind of chewing up the scenery a little bit is Book of Eli.
Oh.
You know, he's
Take a fucking drink because I want to cover Book of Eli on this
Dude,
podcast. I fucking love that movie.
He's so good. And in that scene, I guess spoilers for the Book of Eli, when he finds out that he can't read it.
Oh, man.
When he goes ballistic. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, he's incredible.
It is so good. Like, it's like he was saving all of it for that moment. All of his over-the-topness for that one scene. But yeah, that's the other one that I think of when I think of him going over the top. One character and actress that I wanted to highlight for fucking sure. What did you think of Mila Jovovich?
Outside of Ian Holm, she is actually my favorite performance in the entire movie.
The way that she moves, the way she makes the made-up language seem like a language, and then pretending that she doesn't know English. How many movies have you watched of people trying to speak in broken English that it is like nails on a chalkboard?
Yeah.
Versus she actually sounds like she learned English for the first time in this movie.
She is so incredible in this movie, it makes me mad that she got just kind of turned into Resident Evil girl.
Yeah.
Now, as much as I like some of the Resident Evil movies, I mean, they're all kind of dumb.
Well, I mean, they're all good.
They're kind of dumb in a fun way where I can. Some of them are bad.
Just gotta let that go, huh? Just gotta let that slide right on by.
But the scene when she's looking at the screen as the W comes up and she's just seeing all the snippets of war and just like the emotion that she conveys in her reaction and her facial expressions says a fucking 1,000 words. And
so
she's so good.
Think about the entire first part of the movie up to then when she's just the ditz that you cannot believe is the supreme being to that. And it all works. It's all great. The range that she shows in this movie is incredible.
Yeah, she's absolutely. The more I think about it, she might just be my favorite performance, even over Ian Holm. As much as I love them both,
I can't fault you for that because it is an absolutely incredible performance, and I feel like it gets overlooked because it's such a dumb sci-fi movie, action movie. I think it gets overlooked.
Her delivery of all the multipass lines is just gold.
Ectogamut. Her delivery on Ectogamut when she is just pissed and has a gun to his head.
Yeah, she's great. I also I like that even though they got a shit ton of money and they very easily could have done CGI in more scenes, I actually do appreciate just thinking back to the aliens and like the Gary Oldman scenes like that. I don't remember their name, but the alien species that is practical masks and stuff.
Yes.
Just the fact that they went out of their way to still have practical effects on them.
Mangalores,
was pretty cool.
Not to be confused with Mandalores. Mangalores.
Yeah. They and their effects, like they actually took the time to like sync up their mouth movements with their lines. Yeah. And there's a lot of fucking love and care put in this bonkers fucking weird ass movie that I have to commend.
They used CGI as a tool in this. They did practical where they could.
Yeah, it's an augmentation instead of a crutch.
Yes.
And, shitty late 90s CGI kills so many movies for me when it's so fucking terrible that it just takes you right out of the film. It
makes them hard to revisit.
It makes them so hard to revisit, and it's a bummer too because some stuff that totally worked for you back in the day, and you watch it now, you're just like, oh no. Especially when they go out of their way to use it as a crutch, when they very easily could have. They very easily could have gotten away with cheaper solutions just by using practical, but it was like, we gotta have CG. That's the thing.
It's the future, Geoff.
And I'm just glad the Matrix came out.
In the future, we're never even gonna need actors. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was a thing for a while.
That was a thing that was in the world for a period of time. Yeah. It's fucking crazy. We we've been talking about this movie for like a fucking hour, and I just watched the movie. I got nothing. I don't even know how to formulate opinions on this movie because this is so fucking weird. Let's talk about, why does Xenomorph opera singer have the stones in her stomach, and this stuff in the third act when shit just starts happening. I guess he's just trying to like tie it all back into like the fucking Egyptian hieroglyphic prophecies and stuff. But like, why is the opera singer so important in the movie? I was trying to figure this out, and I just don't understand why.
Because they gave the stones to someone they could trust, Geoff.
But I just don't understand. They spend fucking like 10 minutes of the movie just with her opera performance.
I'm going to assume it has something to do with the size of her flesh pocket. That's about all I got.
Flesh pocket, a term that was just said on this podcast. That's disturbing.
The flesh wallet? Is that a better one? I've also heard it referred to as that.
No, let's keep going. Let's just move on. The excuse me, the blue opera lady really threw me. I was like, is this what LSD is like?
I like that scene though.
The juxtaposition of the fight scene with Mia Jovovich and the opera was kind of cool, but then every time they go back to the opera singer, just like,
and it's more of, remember we talked about in Lockout how some of the editing is really, really strong, and it seems like Luc Besson uses a lot of the same people that he knows and works with and can get his vision across to. I think there's a few moments in Fifth Element, probably none more so than the opera scene and the Mia Jovovich combat scene. The editing in that scene is pretty amazing.
It's pretty cool. I don't really like the fight choreography.
Well, it's very 90s.
It's very 90s and not in a way that I have nostalgia for. Because I am of the age where like 90s action is
the best action.
Fucking is like the cream of the like fucking, you know, Matrix, like Die Hard 3, shit like that, like the real good stuff that I actually clung on to. You know, being someone that was too young to soak in all of the 90s action, where I have nostalgia for just, you know, like all of it, like a lot. Like my dad fucking loves Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal movies, and he can just watch all of them. Because
I can get behind Van Damme movies. My dad, Universal Soldier, man. Especially The Return. Holy shit!
I just being a little kid and being a sci-fi time travel nerd. I always like Time Cop, even though Time Cop, if I watched it now, it's probably.
I don't think I've seen Time Cop.
I'm pretty sure Time Cop, if I watched it now, would be like facepalm levels of stupid.
That's the most 90s sounding video game I've ever heard, by the way.
Right? Time Cop.
Yeah, it seems like a PlayStation 1 game.
It is probably terrible. I watch it now, so I probably never watch it. I will just keep that fond memory and just let it be. With this movie though, I think it's kind of funny because the first like 20 minutes of the movie, I'm taking notes and shit, and you get to a point where I'm just like frothing at the mouth, and I'm just wondering what I'm watching, and it's just so fucking crazy and so fucking all over the place. Where like we get to the point where they go onto the fucking spaceship with the cruise liner thing, right? And they everyone's in like fucking Hawaiian clothes, like and they're giving out the
blasted in paradise.
Yeah.
And
I'm just like, if this is crazy to me and I'm stone cold sober, I can only imagine what filming this movie was like for cocaine riddled Chris Tucker. That had to have been a fucking fever dream of epic proportions, dude.
I could see that though. You got a cruise liner. I mean, they all lean into that. All the cruises lean into that hard.
It's just the movie becomes just like a never-ending sequence of just like crazy batshit, and then when you think there's no possible way they can top it, they top it, and there's more crazy batshit. And I like the ending scene when they go back to Egypt or whatever.
And as they convince her to do her one job.
Yeah, and I love I guess it's like the last scene he's
Father,
in.
You smoke?
Chris, with the way Chris Tucker just like walks out of the movie is great. When he like every 5 minutes there's a bomb going off or some shit. Like, he just walks away.
Dude,
he's just talking his fucking 3,000 words per second cadence.
Corby, I don't have any fire, man. I mean, you got any matches? I don't smoke. Father, you smoke?
I think there's a problem where people around the set were wondering if the Chris Tucker cadence was what everyone was supposed to be doing, because a lot of people randomly try to do like the Chris Tucker stutter and quick fucking rapid fire, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But fucking Chris Tucker makes it work, dude. Fucking madman, dude. I respect that guy.
Okay, so we're at almost an hour. I want to talk about like specific moments in the movie. We've spent a lot of time now on the actors and a lot of the performances and like the movie itself, but I want to talk about scenes like 18 different people signing in as Corbin Dallas and that poor lady behind the counter. Corbin Dallas. Like, she's so exhausted by the end, but that whole scene, that's one of the scenes that I really love. I think that's just genuine comedy. The way it does is it starts out, it starts out being what it is. There's a couple different people wanting to be him, but as it goes on, it gets more ridiculous.
Where even the Nega Scrolls are trying to walk onto the ship as Dallas.
The guy like can't disguise his voice, and as he's getting more and more frustrated and pissed off, like more of the Mangalore bits are coming out. Yeah, and then the other one looks at him and is like, "Oh shit!" Like, we'll be right back.
We'll be right back. Now, why the fuck is Nega fucking evil planet called Mr. Shadow?
I think that is just irony.
That I would, because I was like, they surely didn't just call evil planet Mr. Shadow.
I think that seems okay. So the way I frame that in my mind is that is just like his own personal joke that he says to people he recruits, like fucking Zorg. Like, just they need a name, and he just gives them a name, and it's just like he's basically Unicron. He can say and do whatever he wants. In my own personal headcanon, it's just, you can call me Mr. Shadow.
It was just so random that they gave it a name and for that name. But
or it could be Zorg's name for him.
The idea of just communication with the evil planet making your like fucking head bleed was metal as fuck. That's a great concept. It's almost like Lovecraftian in a way.
Yes.
Like when one of Gary Oldman, one of his best scenes to me was when he's talking to him and his head is just bleeding profusely, and just like the look on his face as he looks like a Lovecraftian protagonist of just his brain can't comprehend what he is speaking to. Yeah, I love that concept.
One thing that I originally wanted to do before it sounded like you had a lot of problems with the characters was I wanted to go into individual characters, and one of the things that I had for Zorg, you talked about juxtaposition earlier. Mm-hmm. How powerful and terrifying does Zorg seem until Mr. Shadow calls?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he just turns on a dime. He's almost a child, like hiding in the corner. Like, just the phone popping up on his desk and the way he looks at it before he picks it up.
His fucking mini elephant Muppet was disturbing to me. I don't know. When he's having that conversation with one of his goons and he's stroking it, I was very uncomfortable, and I needed an adult, and there wasn't an adult around.
I don't know this, but in my mind, that just seems like something Gary Oldman would be like, you know what? I'm using this, and just grabs it from the desk and just walks over in front of the camera.
I would love... Now, I obviously don't know the fucking first thing about directing, but God, it must be fun to direct Gary Oldman just to see the weird-ass fucking method level of shit he would pull for a role.
Yes.
I would be a terrible director because I would just let them all... I was like, I'm not going to fucking tell Gary Oldman what to do.
How would you even start, dude?
It's just like, could you imagine directing Meryl Streep?
And that's your job. Your job is to tell her what to do.
What on earth?
No, Miss Mirren. You don't say it that way. You say it this way.
Exactly. How on earth could a human being have the audacity to direct Gary Oldman or Meryl Streep?
The nutsack that it would take.
Yeah. You would have to be lost up your own asshole like James Cameron to be able to direct them. That is the only way.
That's where the bar is, Geoff. That's how he keeps raising it.
That's interesting. Yeah. Now we know where he went.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. And, okay, imagine you're Luc Besson, and you got to tell, remember, height of popularity, Bruce Willis what to do, Gary Oldman, Ian Holm, and...
You just asked Kevin Smith how telling Bruce Willis what to do worked out.
Right? But just think of the cast in this movie. Now, like, Mia Jovovich is big now. I didn't know who she was when this movie came out. Same Chris Tucker, no one had really ever heard of. So, and, you know, they're names that we know now. But still, just think, you've got the two of them, and then Ian Holm, Gary Oldman, and Bruce Willis, and you are in charge of telling them what to do and how to do it.
Barely directed any. He directed, like, Nikita and fucking The Professional, which are good movies, but we're not taught, like, he's not fucking Steven Spielberg at this point.
Yes.
And the fact that he gets such great performances out of everyone is impressive. He is. I think he is, now in retrospect, after having watched this movie and having watched Lockout, as much as I like a lot about Lockout, I like Luc Besson as a director more than a writer. I think he has wonderful direction and style and just this fucking weird essence he can bring to a movie.
Would you say he has the vision? It's clear he has the vision of what he wants it to be.
Yeah, he is an artist through and through, but I don't think he is a particularly good writer. Outside of probably the best thing he's written, in my opinion, was The Professional. Is the one that has the most in-depth, and it would probably a movie. Just, I guess we're just gonna run the fucking Luc Besson gambit. I'll probably have The Professional on the podcast because you do need to see it as someone who likes Luc Besson, and Jean Reno is fucking amazing in that movie.
I mean, absolutely. I fucking love both of those things you just said.
Jean Reno is an assassin, dude. You have to watch it. He's a fucking assassin.
I'll watch anything with Reno, dude.
Yeah, it's fucking amazing. That movie is great. And it's so grounded and cool, and it's just this little indie fucking assassin movie with Jean Reno. Fucking by Luc Besson, dude. It's just, yes, I want to watch it fucking now. But he has these tropes that he falls back on too often. Even think about, like, you know, like the trope. I know obviously he kind of stole part of you know, the president angle he ripped off of, you know, obviously Escape from New York, but you'll also notice if you look back at something like Lockout and you look back at something like Taken, the dude has an obsession with having daughters abducted. I don't know why. There's always and I guess it's, he like falls back on archetypes like the damsel in distress too much and shit like.
So
and like
that's what I was about
prophecies.
to say. The thing that when you have someone that is basically an auteur that kind of is given free reign to do anything and everything, is they tend to have things that they fall into a lot. There's traps that they fall into a lot because, you know, usually if you're going to hire Luc Besson, you're not hiring Luc Besson because you need a director or a writer. You're hiring Luc Besson for Luc Besson, right? There's a reason you go to specific people like that. That
he has a very specific flair about his movies.
Yes,
for sure.
and that's what you're looking for when you go to him. So the problem, you know, a lot of times the things that they churn out is really good, but they are going to have a common denominator. They are going to have traps and tropes that they fall into a lot, because that is also just kind of part of their style for whatever it is. Sometimes that might work. Sometimes it brings the property down, right? Like, what's the I've never played a single one of his games. He's got his own studio now. The Kanazis, Metal Gear.
Hideo Kojima.
Yes, like he is one of those that is a really good example, because everyone is so usually divided. You either hate his stuff or you love his stuff.
And you're obsessed with it.
And either way, you're obsessed with it. Whether you hate it, you're obsessed with hating it, or you're obsessed with loving it. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. There's a common denominator in every game that he does, and the things people complain about his games is the same thing they complain about every game. The people that love his games, they love the same thing about all of his games. And that's kind of the way, you know, people like Luc Besson and stuff, that translates to movies. I just think it's probably not as obvious a lot of the time in a movie as, say, in a video game.
Frame of comparison for me, just with a different style, but as far as someone I would rather see them just direct and not write anymore, is actually Christopher Nolan. I think Christopher Nolan is now, unfortunately, become a bad writer. I think he, at some point, had a James Cameron level epiphany happen where he got lost up his own asshole.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with a lot of his stuff, but I do know what I hear in a lot of entertainment news. I'm just kind of like, he's kind of a dick.
Yeah. I will always love Memento and
Never saw it.
Batman Begins and The Dark Knight.
Begins is the better one of those two, but yes.
And Tenet is a piece of shit. I'm just gonna say it. Tenet is a bad movie. Tenet is
curious, but no real interest.
You would hate that movie.
Really?
I can tell you right. That movie is. Oh.
I kind of need to see it now.
Christopher Nolan might be even more lost up his own asshole than James Cameron.
Holy shit!
Because, and I can explain my positioning.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. The main character in Tenet is literally called the fucking protagonist. And as soon as I saw
heard about that. Jerry Rocha talked about that.
As soon as I saw the credits roll up, and I was already irritated by the movie, and as soon as I saw the protagonist as his literal fucking name, I was like, Christopher Nolan, go fuck yourself.
What do you think of Inception?
I love Inception. That's actually probably one of the last one. I really like Inception. I liked Dunkirk.
I never saw it.
Partially because I watched Dunkirk in IMAX.
See, that is one thing. As a guy that used to run an IMAX projection system, I do love his love of IMAX.
Yes. Dunkirk in IMAX, and he specifically had the audio cranked up to make it feel like a fucking real-time it was a fucking World War II simulator more than a movie. And as a director, he can craft an amazing experience.
So
he's a great director. If you let him write, you end up with fucking main characters called the fucking protagonist, and you can go straight to hell, Christopher Nolan. How did this podcast divulge into me bitching about Christopher Nolan? I don't know, but
here we are.
Fuck Tenet, dude. Fuck Tenet. He needs to stop fucking writing movies.
Now,
Interstellar, also kind of garbage.
Never saw it.
It's kind of bad. It has great directorial elements to it and some pretty cool performances.
That's the Matthew McConaughey in space one, right?
Yeah.
I could not get past that thought.
Now, I know you hate I actually kind of like McConaughey. I think he's one of those people where when you pick him for the right type of role, he can actually be like Dazed and Confused.
Sahara.
Yeah, like when you have a movie,
I know people
exactly
think that
like
movie. I know people think that Sahara is dumb, but I am a sucker for that entire genre of just adventure movie.
Adventure romps.
Yes,
yeah.
and I think
like
Sahara is a good example of one. Plus, him and Steve Zahn actually work on screen together really well. They play off of each other really, really well.
Like another person that I personally feel fits in that vein that you were talking about earlier about how Matt Damon was perfect for Mark Watney. I think McConaughey does have those types of roles like Sahara and like Dazed and Confused and shit like that, where he in Dallas Buyers Club, where if you just pick him for the right role and you let him be himself and it's a good match, he does have good charisma and good screen presence.
Like any other tool in the toolbox, you just got to know how to use it properly.
Yeah, exactly. He's just not Meryl Streep, and he's not a person that's going to make you forget who you're watching on screen, like those types of incredible actors.
I think at this point we need to add Helen Mirren and Meryl Streep to the Rushmore, because she is your go-to and Helen Mirren is my go-to. So
yeah,
they need to go to the Mount Rushmore of Screenplay Rewind as well.
Agreed. They're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I loved Helen Mirren in Uncharted 3, by the way.
Also, just because Geoff's involved, Anna Kendrick has to be on the Mount Rushmore because yes.
No, well, yeah, absolutely.
Of
Yeah,
course.
of course.
But what were we talking about?
I don't know. How did we get here? I think the roadmap went out the window, literally.
I think Christopher Nolan might be the fifth element. I'm not entirely sure, but
oh no, I have to tell him I love him to save the world.
World's fucked. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Just let Nega Ego take us.
That is the hill we will all die on. So did you have any other specific scenes that you wanted to mention before we kind of sign off? Because I think we've rounded the fucking bases in this episode. I don't even know what the fuck. This is just pure. Geoff had a 50-hour work week, has been drinking a little bit of beer, watched a bonkers ass movie, and I'm probably gonna be confused for like a week trying to process this film, and I don't even really know.
Now,
so I've just been all over the place.
From an analysis standpoint, we know how you feel, but did you at least have fun watching it?
I don't know. I definitely don't hate the movie, and I definitely don't love the movie.
I think that means there's some fun in there somewhere.
I did have some fun with certain scenes, but I spent more time confused than I did actively enjoying the movie, because I was just like I wish I had a time lapse of my face as I was watching this movie, because I was just very taken aback. Especially with like shit in the third act. This movie just goes fucking not off the rails, but just goes to weird places all over the place. And at the very least, I've had a blast talking about the movie and just how it's a fucking enigma of cinema. I don't know how this movie exists. I don't know how someone saw the script and was like, here's a fucking $150 million equivalent from 24 years ago, and it's like, yeah, just go do whatever the fuck you want. Here's some incredible actors. Like Bruce Willis alone is probably like $10 million with the goddamn budget, and they're just like, yeah, go for it, fuck it.
So to bring us full circle, as we've talked about it, I think I've come up with something of an answer to my own question from the beginning. And I think so certain movies are loved for their characters, right, or their style, and some of them just get lucky because they came out when they did, and if they had come out any other time it wouldn't work. I think this one is the trifecta. I think this one has fun, quirky characters that are memorable. Whether you like them or not, they're memorable. You're never going to forget Ruby Rhod.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of the settings and the style of the movie, I think a lot of it works, and a lot of it really kind of holds up still. And I think a lot of them are memorable, and a lot of what's happening like that in that area is memorable. And I think if this movie hadn't come out exactly when it did, mid to late 90s, I don't think this movie would have ever gotten made. If it came out before, if it came out later, if it did, it would look something like Lockout. I don't think it would look like $150 million modern day equivalent, actors in their prime at the top of their heyday. I think it just the timing and the way everything came together on it, whether you love it or hate it, I think it is what it is, and that's why it is kind of beloved.
And now they're really lucky. Like Luc Besson is incredibly fortunate that this came out before The Matrix.
Yes.
Had this come out even months, not even like years later, but like if this had come out months after the first Matrix movie, this movie would have been looked at as a colossal piece of shit, and I don't think it would have had nearly as positive a response as it did, because I really feel like The Matrix was the culmination of sci-fi into, for better or for worse, because a lot of people really like wacky 90s sci-fi, but The Matrix was kind of the turning point for sci-fi into what it is now. And sci-fi is more of like an intellectual headspace for auteurs instead of auteurs with the kind of flair and mindset of cinema that like a Luc Besson has. Mm-hmm. So I agree 1000%. I think this came out at the absolute perfect time.
I think it was just a collision of happy accidents all at once, and I think that kind of has led to its success, and how it's I guess timelessness, because it seems like no matter how old people are that you talk to about this movie, they all love it. So that's probably not the word I'm looking for, but that's the one that came to mind.
It's also just interesting too. I think I would feel a lot differently about this movie had I been 5 years older and was actually old enough to remember watching it as a kid or like a preteen or a teenager, like you did. Like you were the perfect age to receive this movie too. To have it stick and be one that, like you said, it was like your favorite movie for a long time.
It was my favorite movie for a while.
Yeah. What's your favorite movie now if you had to pick one? Did it get like topped by something specific, or do you just now not know what your favorite is because you've seen too many movies?
I've seen so many movies now. I've got about 20 movies. I got 26 movies. I got 1A through 1Z.
Nice.
For a long time, it was the first Avengers. No matter whether it was the best movie in the MCU or not, just because I'd never seen that before. That was a thing. But from that point forward, every Avengers movie that has ever come out, I have seen that before. Even if they're a better movie, I had never seen anything like the Avengers before the first Avengers movie, and that made it number one for a long time. But
the Avengers changed Hollywood.
It changed everything.
It didn't even change superhero movies. It literally changed Hollywood.
Yes.
Like Hollywood is founded on the notion of the way the Avengers has no fucking business existing or working, and it's one of the most fun movies I've ever seen.
It's worth saying that the MCU is a series of accidents as well, because no one could have imagined it would become what it was, what it is now, what it's going to be. And the fact that if you had told me in 2008 that 11 years later, 12 years later, it would still be going as strong as it is and only making more and more money and getting stronger and stronger, I would have told you you're insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I fear the day that superhero movies are no longer in vogue because Hollywood is fucked. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It might be Endgame was where I was going with that. I don't know. I can't decide.
And Endgame is fucking good. I have a pretty rounded out top 5 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have as much of an issue listing my absolute favorite movies. It's just I don't know how to rank them. That's the problem. John Carpenter's The Thing, Empire Strikes Back, Pulp Fiction, stuff like that.
You and I have often talked about how one of the reasons why we started this podcast and one of the reasons why we like to sit around and talk about movies as much as we do is the different directions you and I each come from a movie.
Yeah.
And from a more analytical point of view like you have, I imagine it might be easier to rank them. For me, like, yeah, man, it's fucking great. I laughed, I cried, some shit blew up real nice. It was fucking awesome. From that perspective, every movie is my favorite movie.
You're grading them as far as your emotional response and reaction to how the movie made you feel, while I'm grading it as like a product because I analyze it like a product.
You're the school teacher and I'm the parent.
Yeah. And what's wonderful about movies is either thing
they're both valid.
They're both valid. They're both perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes movies great. You can talk for 3 hours about a movie that you love. You can talk about a movie that you hate for 3 hours. You can talk about a movie that
I've been talking about a movie that I hate for going on 2 weeks now, and we can talk about that off mic if you want, or I can say what it is so people aren't.
Just go ahead and say what it is.
I have been ramping up slowly for whatever fucking reason to our Godzilla vs. Kong episode by starting from the beginning.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Oh, God, dude. I have been talking nonstop about Godzilla 2014 since I watched it, about just what an awful movie it is.
Godzilla 2014 has an amazing first 5 minutes and an amazing last 5 minutes. And I don't understand how the rest of the movie exists. Let's
save it. Let's save it. We'll hit all the high notes of this conversation in Godzilla versus Kong, because I'm sure we're going to run the gambit comparing them like we always do.
Yeah.
And we'll probably talk about Meryl Streep and Helen Mirren and
John Hurt and Ian Holm hit our Mount Rushmore.
Then we'll just start talking about the MCU like we always do. But
and then you know what? It wouldn't be a Ron and Geoff conversation with a little bit of Dark Souls.
Everyone,
was that the first time we mentioned Dark Souls? We almost went a podcast without mentioning Dark Souls. I'm glad I saved us because that would have been unfortunate.
We almost did it. I went Metal Gear this time.
Take a drink, Bobby. I talked about Dark Souls.
Bobby. I am just gonna say though, because I do want to talk about it when we get there. The tease that I will give is Godzilla 2014 pissed me off so much more this time than it did the first time I watched it.
Interesting. See, I watched it the first time, and that was enough for me.
Oh, it was enough for me for 7 years, I guess. And then I was like, why not? I can tell you why not, Geoff.
I could have fucking told you why not, because there's no fucking movie.
Oh.
How the fuck do you have Elizabeth Olsen, one of the best actresses in Hollywood right now, and have fucking nothing for her to do?
Yeah.
That's fucked up. Yeah.
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 That's a thing.
So many random tangents in this episode. It's almost impressive.
It's because you and I are about to fall over, I think.
Yeah. That's true.
Probably you more than I, by the way. I'm not trying to say that my life, my work, my job is killing me as much as yours is. So
I've been running off of fumes and my internal hatred for Christopher Nolan's Tenet for the past 25 minutes. So we should probably wrap up. You got Chris Tucker in this movie on one end of the spectrum. I'm on the other end of the spectrum, just half fucking dead. I need to go to bed. But since now, I just want to give you one final opportunity. Were there any other tidbits before I sign us out that you wanted to cover with Fifth Element? Because if it was your favorite movie for a period of time, I know you love this movie.
I think tangentially we've touched on everything, basically. My plan going into this was I wanted to kind of spend the hour going through each of the 5 main characters a little bit, but we kind of did that, just not all at once.
Yeah, things were talked about in no particular order. But at all. But I feel like we touched on the main focus points of the movie. So yeah. I believe we have figured out our schedule, so we had to do a little bit of a time crunch with our scheduling to get us back onto our original schedule, because Ron and I both had the reason why the podcast got delayed a week was because we both had our second vaccine doses and both had a hard time with it.
It really felt like I found the little red button on the bottom of the gun.
Yeah. I do not regret getting it at all. It was just very unfortunate timing because it fucked us up.
I regretted it
right
in the moment.
as we were about to be watching and then recording this episode, and we didn't want to, record an episode when we couldn't properly talk about or watch the film.
My teeth were chattering. That's all it would have been. This entire podcast is just my teeth chattering.
I would have probably been asleep because I didn't get any sleep for an entire night because I was also having such bad chills. But
I would have wished I could have slept.
I digress. So I believe what we're going to do to get us back on schedule is we had talked about at some point having a Godzilla vs. Kong episode. I believe we'll probably eventually do that one once Ron sees it as a bonus if we still feel like talking about it. But I believe we are segueing next week, Ron, into a little movie, a good kaiju movie called Pacific Rim.
Fucking A.
If you want to talk about a fucking kaiju movie that Geoff can get behind, it's Pacific Rim. Probably, but it's tough. Might be my favorite kaiju movie. I mean, do you consider Kong Skull Island a kaiju movie? Because it's got to be a kaiju movie, right? I mean, it's fucking King Kong.
I think this day and age, a general monster movie like that is probably a kaiju movie. I think Pacific Rim has turned everything into a kaiju movie.
I'm okay with that. But I feel like especially now that they're fucking merged together into Godzilla vs. Kong, I feel like Kong Skull Island has to be a kaiju movie. But where I was going with it is my two favorite kaiju movies are probably the first Pacific Rim and Kong Skull Island, are the two that I like the best. Mm-hmm. So I'm super stoked to talk about it. I believe our plan was to then segue into the Pacific Rim sequel, right? For the following episode, because we're doing a back-to-back.
Yeah, I believe that this is our summer franchise, right? This is what we were planning as our franchise summer along, whatever it was we were calling it. And I believe we had talked about in a previous episode, doing the sequels directly after another one. So it'd be Pacific Rim and then followed by Pacific Rim 2.
And potentially a bonus episode of the Pacific Rim anime because we want to watch that and then see what we think about it. And if we like it or if we hate it, we might talk about that in a bonus.
Also, I may need to come over for that one. I may not have Netflix anymore.
You don't have Netflix anymore?
Nah, I turned it off. We weren't using it.
Interesting. I still watch.
We rarely use it.
I'm that person that I have all the fucking streaming services. I've lost track of which ones I own. I just don't really care. I just want to have it if I find something I want to watch. I have Funimation, I haven't watched Funimation in like 6 months, and I still have it. And I should deactivate it, but I'm probably not. I just forget. I just get sidetracked by shit. I just signed up for another one. I signed up for Apple TV Plus.
Really?
Just because I wanted to watch.
I've been refusing the free trial.
Lol.
So
I've been really wanting to watch the.
You should
the
have
Servant.
had 3 months free. You had a MacBook Air for a hot minute.
Yeah.
When you buy an Apple device, you get it for free.
I don't know if I still have that because I returned that. Since I returned the MacBook. They might know. Apple knows all. I got it to watch Servant, the fucking horror TV show that everyone likes on Apple TV Plus, and also I wanted to watch that I wanted to watch that Ted Lasso show that everyone won't shut the fuck up about. I just wanted to see what it was all about.
I've heard of that one. I don't really know what it is.
My Twitter is just nonstop Ted Lasso love. I got to the point where it's like, okay, I'll fucking watch it. Stop talking about it.
They're not going to stop.
But, yeah.
Geoff.
What was that?
So they're not going to stop, Geoff.
They never. Twitter never stops.
You can't stop. Won't
Twitter
stop.
is the fucking Mr. Shadow of the fucking world. It just never stops. So if you like this episode, I believe we are. Yes. We were doing a time crunch. I believe
we have derailed ourselves so many times.
So it's a thing. I'm trying to get us the fuck out of here. I believe we are doing back-to-back episodes to get the next Pacific Rim, like the Pacific Rim fucking podcast out on the 17th. To then, I believe that would correct our schedule and get us back on track. But we'll fucking see. I don't even fucking know. But yes, if you have enjoyed this never-ending series of tangents,
of happy accidents.
And, on the Christopher Nolan Adoration Podcast, you can always follow us on Twitter.
Is that our new name? The Kathleen Kennedy and Christopher Nolan Rushmore Podcast?
Oh, just vomited inside my mouth. I need to go to bed.
But you're into that, though.
That's true. So follow us on... Jesus Christ. Yeah, I can't even get I got halfway to the fucking Twitter handle, and we got another goddamn tangent. Stop it!
Just cut my mind.
More fucking just unrelenting like the goddamn Twitterverse and Ted Lasso. Just stop it.
Just overwhelming like Ruby Rod.
Yes. Now I just got the mental image of you in that outfit, and I can't unsee that.
I want that blonde hair.
You need to go as that character for Halloween one year.
I don't have the physique for that. I need to be a Mangalore.
Okay. You go as Bruce Willis.
Oh no, I don't have the physique for that either.
Okay, well, we'll fucking find somebody for you. Just somebody. I'll go as Chris Tucker.
I'll be Vito Cornelius. There's enough robes there to pad me out.
Okay, yeah, that'll work. Or maybe I'll just go as Mia Jovovich in the fucking what is the fucking rubber band bikini called? What is that thing called again?
Thermal bandages.
Yeah, I'll go as thermal bandages, battle damage Mia Jovovich,
and you will
for
be,
Halloween.
For lack of a better word, perfect.
And never allowed within 100 yards of a school ever again. If you would like to follow this fucking nonsense on Twitter, you can follow us at SPR Filmcast. You can follow me on my personal channel at G Miller SPR. Ron, where can people find you when you are not talking about what thermal bandages? Is that what it was called?
I love that you can't remember.
I can't remember the fucking thermal bandages, dude. This is so fucking weird. Why? Why is she wearing thermal fucking bandages instead of fucking clothes when clothes exist?
Because she could encounter an open flame, Geoff.
Oh, fuck. She's the fucking chosen one. Nothing can hurt her except for bullets.
Are you
That's her only
chosen
weakness,
when you're
bullets.
manufactured?
She's the chosen one, bro. She's the one.
Oh, you can find me 3 days a week, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. U.S. Central Time, over on twitch.tv/RonsenseTV. I'm RonsenseTV on YouTube and Twitter as well. Almost at Twitch again.
I can't form English sentences anymore. I know English and I know bad English.
Also, if anyone gives a shit, I decided to try out Letterboxd. So
how's that going? I have heard about it. I know nothing about Letterboxd.
Yeah, I'm RonsenseTV over there on Letterboxd. It's basically
because what's wrong with one more tangent before we sign? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Just go.
It's like this podcast is the ZF1 of podcasts, Geoff. It's got the really net launcher. It's got the tangents.
It's got the Dark Souls.
It's got the Dark Souls and the Rushmores. I don't know. So Letterboxd is basically trying very hard to not be IMDb and get sued.
Okay.
Do you know all the social media aspects of IMDb that no one ever uses? It's that.
Sure.
It's that. It's the lists. You can rate and review. You can follow people that you want to follow to see what they're watching. You can check in, like, I'm watching this movie now. It's basically just trying to be a better version of all the social media stuff on IMDb that most people listening to this didn't know IMDb had.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
and still don't.
I did make some watch lists. One's the ones I'm considering for the podcast, us covering, and one is ones that we did cover in order.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's there.
No. Yeah. Any other tangents? We good?
I could probably dig something up if you really wanted me to.
Nah, that's okay. Have a good night. I'm gonna go to bed now.